Hello everybody, it's Mary. Welcome back to the channel. I'm super excited about this video today because I'm going to be showing you 6 different ways to make a galaxy background. It's a very popular technique, but it also can be kind of intimidating. So hopefully this video will give you an option that you feel comfortable with giving it a shot so that you can add it to your list of skills. So let's get started. The first one is going to be a no ink galaxy background. How is this possible? Well, it's possible because if you can find some paper packs out there that have the galaxy background already on it, then you can just attach it to a piece of cardstock. Now this set right here was extremely affordable, but the paper is quite thin. So I would not recommend using this solely without some sort of backing. Of course, you're going to have a backing in your base anyway, so I guess that's a moot point. So this particular pack, I believe, gives me 4 sheets of each of these images that I'm showing you. So I can make galaxy backgrounds for days. And it was extremely easy to do that. I'm going to show you just how I put this card together so that you can kind of see it in its final stages. But you can look around and see, I know that they probably make 12 by 12 sheets or and that you can cut down, or you can find them in other paper packs out there. So it's just an option. If you don't want to get inky or you don't feel like it's going to come out and look the way you want it to, it's an option for sure. And I put this up front because it's sort of like cheater code. So, and also, which I think is quite underrated in our skill set. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel a little bit guilty if I do something that's too easy for my card. But really, at the end of the day, it's still handmade because my hands made it. All right, so I'm showing you here, I put a very, very thin layer of glue around the edge so that I didn't get any of the cardstock coming up off the sides, but you don't want to make it globby because it's thin paper on here, so you don't want any bubbles. So that is the first one, and those are how I finished the cards off. Just added some cute little images there and some fun sentiments. Okay, let's move on to technique number 2. This is the freehand painted galaxy background. What does this mean? Basically, it's where you have your cardstock and you're going to use your choice of watercolor. Here I'm using gouache, anything you want. Even if you smush some dye ink on a little craft mat, you're going to do it where it's freehand, but you're using a paintbrush to get your technique. So again, I'm using Arteza Gouache for this technique. Gouache is a mix pretty much between an acrylic and a watercolor paint, so it's very opaque, but you can also thin it out to make it a little bit more translucent. I am using a glass mat here. This is the Tim Holtz Glass Mat. Now part of this that I did not show you was to get the stars on this background, instead of using paint splatters, which we'll get into later on in the video, I actually heat set this background of stars onto my cardstock. So it took care of all of that for me. All I had to do was heat set it with some white or clear embossing powder. I chose white because I love the stark white look of that. And I heat set that, so now I have this embossed resist technique happening, which made this process that much easier. So I am going to be using a paintbrush here with some water and my gouache, and I'm just going to be picking the colors I want my galaxy background to have. I've seen galaxy backgrounds with every color of the rainbow. Of course, as you can even see with my little transition between techniques, that background that I'm using there, tons of different colors on it. So just the space is the limit. See what I did? But it is, because you can do whatever you want with a galaxy background, any color theme you want. So I'm going through and I'm just placing down my colors. This is probably one of my favorite because of its ease and just how fun it is to just get inky and play. But I'm going to want to round this image out, or this technique out, with some black Distress Oxide soot. In the black soot rather. So I'm going to wipe away some of that ink because it covered up my stars. I want my stars to be alive and well here with the brightness of them. But that's it. That's how you get your galaxy background for this technique. So instead of paint splatters, we used a background star stamp to get that look. And then here's a close-up of that finished card. Right here I used this cute little Lawn Fawn set of this little fortune teller. So yeah, so again, very simple, very easy technique to get your backgrounds for that one. So we're moving into the third technique here, and the third technique is going to be where we use alcohol inks to get our galaxy background. So this was very tricky. The reason I say that is because I feel like I had the least amount of control with the alcohol inks, and I kind of just had to let go and see what happened. But my intent when I started doing this was to make a galaxy background. So you can kind of see how you know that was my intent is because I'm putting down black alcohol ink in between the colors to sort of make it mix on its own. But because I don't want them to fully cover themselves, I kind of had to leave spaces in for some of those areas for the color. I'm using Pinata inks and some blender solution here to kind of just make my colors mix. This one, again, probably the least amount of control, but the largest amount of wonderment because I had no idea what was going to come out of this. In fact, I think there was a part of this process where I thought, this isn't going to work. I think look at right here. I pour alcohol or blending solution all over it and I'm like, I think that's pretty much done. But with galaxy backgrounds, you have to just kind of see it through. And so I did. So I did my white splatters. I'm going to show you how I did that here. I used some white acrylic paint to get that really stark white look of the stars on top. This was another background, same technique, but not the exact one I showed you as I was making. And then my toothbrush technique. Gotta get a toothbrush out in there. That is going to make those splatters look realistic like space. So that's a lot of fun to do in here. I just showed you a still photo of that. So that is the alcohol ink galaxy background. Really, really super fun. I just used some cute little alien-like monsters and made a birthday card. And I was pretty pleased with that one. Again, sometimes with alcohol, or rather with galaxy backgrounds, you kind of just have to see it through. And I think if you've been kind of looking to see how to make those, you've heard that before. Okay, so the next technique that we're going to be doing for our galaxy backgrounds is going to be ink smooshing. Pretty much hands down the easiest way to make a galaxy, in my opinion. The quickest, I should say, too. So I'm going to take 3 primary colors of this Avery Elle liquid watercolor, and I'm going to put it on my craft mat. This is just a Ranger craft mat wrapped around a Dollar Tree clipboard. And I am going to put my watercolor cardstock straight down into it. And I'm going to show you this a couple different times. The first amount of cards, or the first amount of ink that I get on these cards, it turns out to be a lot lighter. Now with watercolors, they usually dry back a bit, so it's a lot lighter when they're fully dried. But when I did it again with this next set I'm going to show you, I got a lot more vibrant colors. So it really just depends on how much of what color you're putting down, and you're going to get different looks. So here I did take my heat tool to kind of dry those a bit, but I'm going to show you this again. So I'm going back in and I'm using the same 3 colors, but you'll see as I pick up my watercolor cardstock the difference, and I may have put more ink down this time. It looks like I did. Looks like I went a little crazy with the ink, but I'm going to spray it with some water, and then I'm just going to smash my cardstock right down into the center of it and look at that vibrancy. So like I said, probably the easiest technique, the least amount of work in my mind. I didn't have to, you've seen all the other techniques, but this one, it really is as simple as what you're seeing here. So I get those down. Of course, I'm going to let them dry a bit. I'm having too much fun though, so I keep on going. Keep on going. And I think I got so many backgrounds out of this technique because when I would see, look, I'm trying to pick up all the ink and not waste it, but then I just have to add more and I just have to keep going. So it's definitely addictive when you're doing this. You just want to keep at it and then add more color of what you're missing. Okay, so that's enough of that. We've got this down and we're going to be moving into the next part of this. Now, here are my backgrounds. These are all the ones that I have, and I'm really, really pleased with them. I think they're super fun. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some glow-in-the-dark, embossing powder. So this is another thing you can add to a galaxy background to add that extra something. Of course, I'm going to add my black soot to kind of bring that spacey look in, so it's not just colors. But I am going to be adding some stars. It's a stamp of a constellation stars, and I'm going to be adding that with some embossing powder. I think this was really, really fun to do. I am going to show you in a little bit the close-up of the glow-in-the-dark look that the cards have. it's not like someone's going to be opening up my card in the dark or even be tempted to bring it into a dark room. I would have to tell them that it glows in the dark, but it's really, really fun to kind of see that come together. So that's another technique that you can do for your galaxy backgrounds, is to add that additional piece. Okay, so let me show you some close-ups here of some of these cards that I made with the ink smooshing technique. So here we have this one right here, and there are our glow-in-the-dark. Now, of course, I used the embossing powder on the stars as well. And then this one was the softer background that we did. This was a super fun card to do for my brother's birthday. I just gave that one to him. Okay, let's move on to our next technique. This is Mica Powder Galaxy Background. And what's different about this one, because it still is that loose freehand type of watercoloring, I'm using mica powders, but I'm also using it on black watercolor cardstock. So that's going to take that the process of making sure you have enough black on your project by using black ink. So I don't have to go back in with any kind of distress oxide or distress ink in the black soot to kind of round that out, because there's enough black on the cardstock itself. So I am, though, going to show you the freehand of the technique here. So I'm going to wet the cardstock. Now, black watercolor cardstock to me is just amazing. I added the water first, and then I'm going to go in with just dropping in the color. The mica powders that I'm using, you'll see as I pick up some of these colors, are just phenomenal. They look sparkly on the screen, so imagine what they look like in real life, because you know the screen always has a hard time picking up some of those sparkles and shimmer kind of look. But I'm just dropping in colors, and this is a one-layer card too, because I heat embossed my images straight onto this black color watercolor cardstock. One thing with mica powders, though, is you're going to want to add something like an Arabic gum powder to it. You all have been so helpful in letting me know of that addition that you need to add to mica powders to make them bond and to make them not wipe off your project. And somebody in my comment section said that it was a 1-to-1 ratio. So I'm going to be testing that out. For this one, I didn't have the powder at the time, so I just used some hairspray to set it. Or you can use sort of like a paint spray if you take it outside in a well-ventilated area, and you can kind of set that, and it should be good to go. But already, without any other work, this is already looking like it's coming together. I am going to go back in with a little bit more of the black mica powder to kind of cover up some of that. I don't want to cover up a lot, but I do want to make it look like the space in between the colors, to make it look more realistic. So already happy with this, but you know we have to add some more stars. So I'm going to take some white gouache, and I am just going to take my paintbrush, and I'm going to go to town with this. I'm using a flexible, I'll talk more about this in the next technique, but it's a flexible kind of cutting mat. And I like the fact that it's not an acrylic block to take my paint and flick it off of. It's flexible, which means it's going to bend and kind of flick with the paintbrush. So I know that sounds kind of weird, but it does work a little bit better. And there is the mica powder look on black watercolor cardstock. So so this one was really, really easy to do as well, and a lot of fun. And again, I'm really a fan of that kind of loose watercoloring where you can just play. All right, so let's move into our last techniques, the ink blending galaxy background. You've probably seen this all over YouTube, but I'm going to show you, these are the colors I picked. I potentially am dancing there. I don't recall, but those are the colors, and I'm going to be using Bristol Smooth cardstock, not watercolor cardstock, which you certainly can use, but Bristol Smooth is just amazing when you are ink blending, and I did not feel like having a tricep workout today. I just wanted to ink blend, and that was all. I'm going to pick my colors and very randomly and haphazardly toss them onto my Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I'm going to make sure I'm leaving enough space to try to get in all of those colors. This is probably one of those techniques, like the alcohol ink, where when you're doing it in your mind, you're thinking there's no possible way this is going to look decent for a galaxy background, because that's what I was thinking. Even though I knew better, I was thinking the same thing. But I got my color down. I went in with some sapphire, chip sapphire, but I realized that it's Oxide ink and it's opaque, so it's probably going to cover up my colors, so I stopped. And I did not put any more of that on and pushed that to the side. I did bring in the Distress ink in black soot because this is not a pigment, there's no pigment properties in this, so it's a little bit more translucent. So I did go ahead and use that to bring in some of that space look. I put a piece of masking paper on my fingers because I was getting fingerprints all over this. And I'm just going to add that up. So already, okay, we're getting there. We're looking good. But of course, we need to add a few things. I have some shimmer spray here, which I'm going to do the water resist or water technique. Oxides are great for that. You can drop some water on them. In this case, it's shimmer. And you are going to pick that up and get that really nice distress oxide background. What is that technique called? I don't even know. The water technique. Okay, so I'm going to go back in here with a paper towel, and I'm just going to pick that up. Make sure you don't pounce your paper towel back over your project because you're going to shift around some of that ink, so be careful with that. But already I'm loving the way that it's coming out. So I'm going to show you 3 ways I put stars on the backgrounds of my galaxies. So the first way is I'm taking out this little flexi thing. This is from the Dollar Tree. It was a large cutting mat, and you can see me flicking off the paint right onto the project. I do that most of the time. Second thing I do is take my paintbrush right to the project. Now with the flexible thing I was showing you, it's a cutting mat. I cut it down, made it small and portable, rounded the edges, and I love it. It's fantastic. I like to just have it, move it around, smush some ink on it, and then also use it for techniques like this. Now the third technique to put on stars, I'm going to take my toothbrush. Now this is not the toothbrush that I use on a daily basis. This is just for my arts and crafts. But I am going to flick this on with my thumb onto my project. I think this really finishes off your card, your galaxy backgrounds. There's no other technique that I know of that can get you this splatter and tiny, tiny stars. I like the other 2 techniques I used for, well, actually used 4 on this entire background to include the shimmer spray. And I like all of those techniques. But this one I feel is just the cherry on top. You know, it just really gives you that, it fills in the gaps and all of that. So I would highly recommend giving that a try. Now I do have a glob on the center of my page here, and I could have just let it go. But no, here I go. I try to attempt to remove it. Just leave it alone. Just use an image or a sentiment. Don't go back with anything. Nope, don't do it. Okay, there I go. It's okay. I'm going to cover it anyway. But here are some pictures of some cards that I finished up with this technique. I'm so glad that you stopped by to check out this compilation of galaxy backgrounds. I'm really hoping that if you were hesitant to give this a try, this video helped you choose an option that will work for you, or just try them all because they're all really, really fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will list everything I could find in the video description below. And don't forget to follow me on other social media forums so that we can connect outside of YouTube. And click subscribe if you want to see more from me. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.